Welcome to our presentation on other duties as assigned of Library Unconference. We're Group 5, also known as Team SmAlbany, aka the Flummoxed Librarians Rescue Committee, but you can call us Liz King, Stephanie Bwist, Joe Burke, and Amy Hathaway. Our story begins, as so many stories do, at the Fountain. The Fountain is a venerable, old-timey restaurant and bar on New Scotland Avenue in Albany, within easy commute of all of our homes. We're very lucky that we live in such a close proximity to one another, and also to our esteemed mentor, Mary Kuhn. The Fountain is not anyone's favorite restaurant, but it is one that everyone can easily agree on, and so it became our unofficial headquarters. Our project came together over the course of 3 meetings here, interspersed with numerous emails and meetups at DLP events. In our initial conversations about the project at the DLP retreat in Rensselaerville, we fixated on the idea of putting together a digital toolbox with links to information and resources from libraries about the 2020 US Census. Initially, we felt that having a one-stop shop LibGuide to help librarians in different types of libraries would be super helpful. But after thinking about it and working on that idea for a few weeks, we realized that the resources that we had in mind already existed, and ours would be redundant. So we scrapped that idea. And so it was that we gathered for our first meeting at the Fountain, which used to be a thing you could do. That's our table. We looked very different 8 months ago. We began tossing around ideas for projects and eventually landed on what must happen when 2 or more librarians are gathered for more than 10 minutes. One of us uttered the immortal refrain, "They don't teach you that in library school." "They don't teach you that in library school" is a phrase peculiar to our profession that conveys that no matter how good your master's education in library science must have been, it cannot be comprehensive. And so there's so much that you can learn on the job that you may not have even thought that you would have to deal with in your professional life. In many librarian jobs, we're called on to fill countless roles, from public relations and marketing to tech support, from facilities management to finance and budgeting, and many, many more besides. Sometimes we even get to talk and think about books. Oftentimes when we think about these critical responsibilities for which we may be ill-prepared by our formal education, we think about them as falling under the heading of that other great librarian cliche, other duties as assigned. So that's what we were thinking about as the kernel for an idea for a project. But what could we do with that idea? How could we convey information about those other duties as assigned that aren't covered in library school? We discussed short filmed TED-style talk videos, but preferred the idea of a live interactive event, which also used to be a thing you could do. Should we have some kind of mini conference? Well, maybe, but the more we talked about it, the more we came around to the idea of an unconference. An unconferences invert the traditional format by drawing their topics and speakers from among the conference attendees. It's a very democratic form of a meeting, with much of the event's substance being drawn from the bottom up rather than the top down. Or, as Rebecca Bagley put it, at an unconference, no topics have been predetermined, no keynote speakers have been invited, no panels have been arranged. Instead, the event lives and dies by the participation of its attendees. They decide what topics will be discussed, and they convene the individual breakout sessions. In other words, an unconference has no agenda until the participants create it. So now we have a title and a format. But how would our unconference work? Since the topic of our event, the things they don't teach you in library school, but which you may encounter in your career, would be most useful to library school students and people in the early phases of their careers, we couldn't count on people to come to our event knowing what an unconference was and ready to participate to the high degree that a true unconference would require. So we came up with a compromise. Part of the event would feature TED-style talk presentations from experts, and part of it would feature breakout sessions with topics chosen by participants and featuring participant-guided discussions. We came up with a list of topics that they don't teach you in library school and sought out representatives of different types of libraries to address those topics.
Outreach and communication, the next steps. So now we've got an idea. What's next? Obviously, a lot of planning, as well as communication and outreach. We had about 4 months from when we decided on our event idea to the actual event. During that time, we needed to stay in regular communication as a group and with our mentor advisor, Mary. We did so via an email, fountain dinner meetings, and web video calls. We also had to reach out to several individuals and organizations to put our event together. This was meant to be a community event, and since one of our project outcomes was networking, it made sense to tap into the myriad of professional library resources available in the Capital Region. Plus, we were working with little to no budget. Event logistics. We already figured out what and the why, but next we needed the who, when, and where. So most importantly, we needed to find a venue, book our speakers, gather together miscellaneous supplies, and put together an after-party networking event. Our venue. We had already decided we wanted to make our event centrally located for the Capital Region, somewhere that had a good-sized space and met our budget of no cost. We mustered up our geography skills and decided on the city of Troy for its central location and close proximity to after-party options. As for possible event space, Troy Public Library was a no-brainer. Fortunate for us, we were able to reserve the art gallery space on our chosen date with no issues. Venue booked. Once we figured out how many speakers we could reasonably fit into our curated portion of the event, we brainstormed topic ideas. Keeping our central theme in mind, we factored in topic diversity, our target audience, and our connections to come up with 3 very relevant topics: customer service, budgeting, and trauma-informed libraries. Who did we know that were equipped with the skill sets to speak about these other duties as assigned? Putting on our networking hats, we created a short list of names and sought the chosen ones out. After a few trials and errors, we confirmed some expert speakers, which Stephanie will talk about in a few minutes. Miscellaneous supplies. Now that we had the big questions out of the way, we also had to fill in the gaps of supplies, refreshments, speaker gifts, etc. Troy Public Library, our venue, provided most of our audiovisual equipment, plus tables and chairs. We also pooled our resources as a group to provide things such as pens, markers, folders, programs, post-it notes, and refreshments. And our packet on the left is a giveaway that we gave to the attendees, and on the right, you can see our refreshments. The after party. Part of our event was an off-site after party to keep the conversations going and network with other attendees. Again, we were looking for somewhere that was close to the event, free, and interesting. Our initial plan to have a tropical after party at Franklin Alley Social Club fell through due to timing, so we used our contacts to cement another Troy mainstay, Footsy Magoo's. Footsy's graciously let us use their back room and even provided some complimentary snacks. And as you can see on the map here, a 5-minute walk from the Troy Public Library. A partnership. So something that happened more organically than strategically was our partnership with CDLC. Through some of our early communications, research, and decision-making, CDLC offered to partner with us on the event and provide continuing education credits to any interested attendees. CDLC is a pillar in our regional library community, and this was a huge draw for our event. In addition to CE credits, they also donated supplies and offered to assist with registration and marketing. A huge thanks to CDLC. Marketing, perhaps our most important outreach. We used popular online tools to set up a marketing campaign to reach as many people as we could. Our first step involved creating an Eventbrite page where people could find out necessary information and register for the event. We also created a Facebook event, which we boosted close to the event date. We used those 2 event pages to spread the word, branching out to Twitter, Reddit, and emails to local organizations. Several, including NYLA sections, the Southern Adirondack Library System, Upper Hudson Library System, Mohawk Valley Library System, and the New York State Library Assistance Association, sent emails out to their members. As a partner, CDLC also listed our event on their calendar. Additionally, since part of our target demographic was library school students, we also reached out directly to the UAlbany Information Science Department. Our campaign must have worked because registration numbers heading into the event were over 95%.
Observation about the day of the event. The Unconference took place on Saturday, March 7th at 2 p.m. at the main branch of the Troy Public Library located at 102nd Street, Troy, New York. While having it on a weekend, we did realize that we may discourage some people from attending, but because the location did not have a parking lot, we felt that having it on the weekend allowed attendees to access ample on-street parking as well as local lots that became free and available to the public over the weekends. One of these attendees actually ended up being a board member from the Troy Public Library who was super excited that we were hosting the event. at her home library and that she was able to attend. The group did arrive early that day to set up. We created a check-in table, a snack station, and ample seating for the presentations. Before we started, we did acknowledge why we were there and the people that helped us along the way. That included the NYLA Developing Leaders Program, Mary Kuhn, who was our mentor for the whole program and the event, the Capital District Library Council, who graciously agreed to co-sponsor the event and give our attendees continued education credits. We also thanked the Troy Public Library for allowing us to use their space. The curated part of our Unconference was in the form of 3 presentations. The first one was done by Stephanie Ross from the Hudson Valley Community College and was all about customer service and the importance of having a frequently asked question page on your website. This was then followed by budgeting by Dr. Elizabeth Searing, from a board member from the Altamont Free Library. The last presentation was done by another developing leaders team that included Catherine Brenner, Elizabeth Putton, Emily Spinner, and Megan Wakeman. They did a wonderful presentation about trauma-informed libraries. They even got the audience involved by handing out fidget toys that allowed them to be engaged throughout the presentation. All of these topics were things that we felt that we didn't learn in library school and that others may not have learned as well. After the curated part of our sessions, we did have a breakout session. This breakout session was 20 minutes long and was broken up into 3 different groups. The topic for these groups was collected from the attendees throughout the earlier presentations. The 3 different topics were dealing with difficult patrons, building maintenance, and library safety and security. It wasn't a surprise that the most popular topic was dealing with difficult patrons, and that was the biggest group. These groups did allow people to talk to each other and get to know each other a little bit more. After the main event, we did wrap up by having an informal networking event at Footsy Magoo's, a place that was only located about 5 minutes away from the Troy Public Library. Because it was in walking distance, we didn't lose too many of the group and still had a great session of where people actually got to talk to each other and relax in a more casual environment.
I will be giving you an overview of our team's use of analytics, participant feedback, and potential future topics for a similar event. We used Eventbrite to promote our event and register free tickets. There was a total of 1,571 page visits to our Eventbrite listing, with spikes in visits corresponding to the dates that our partners shared the event through emails, listservs, and social media posts. The capacity of the event was 40, set by the library, and we capped registration at 45 tickets to allow for a 7 to 10% of registrants possibly not showing up. This was at the advice of our mentor, Mary Kuhn. There was an increase in registered ticket holders as the event date neared, which we were expecting, and we would suggest that our speakers register for future events in order to better calculate the total number of attendees and plan ahead for a percent of no-shows. Using Eventbrite to manage our ticket sales allowed for ease in monitoring tickets sold, exporting the registrant list, automatically sending a reminder to guests of the upcoming event, and also gathering metrics during and after the event. We noticed that some attendees had their Eventbrite app open and ready to show us their ticket as they entered, which would be really useful if someone were running a similar event where they needed to scan the QR codes as attendee entered. We opted not to do that since we had a smaller audience, and we used a physical sign-in sheet instead. We also created a Google form to collect feedback after the event. We created and included a QR code on the program that linked to the Google form, and we gave attendees time to complete the survey at the end of the event. We printed a small number of paper copies of the survey ahead of time in case there were attendees who weren't comfortable using their phones to take the survey. we received 13 responses out of 30 attendees, which is a 43% response rate. And we intended to follow up with a reminder email to participants to complete the survey after the event, but we were unable to do this due to the sudden onset of COVID-19 related circumstances. And so we didn't get as many responses as we had initially hoped for. Google Forms worked very well for our purposes. On the left side of the screen, you can see the mobile view of the survey that attendees would see after scanning the QR code. And on the right side, you'll see the admin view of results once you're logged into Google Forms. The next few slides will highlight some of the questions that we asked, along with the responses we received. Our demographics question included what category describes you, and we gave attendees some options to pick from. When we planned our event, we were targeting early to mid-career librarians, and as you can see from the results, 77% of the survey takers identified as early to mid-career librarians. So that's a win. Given how much effort we put into promoting and finding partners, we also wanted to know how people heard about the event. The majority of attendees heard through the CDLC mailing list or from colleagues and friends. Surprisingly, no one reported having heard through social media posts. Granted, this only accounts for the 43% of attendees who completed the survey. But given how much we were expecting social media to be more popular for communicating this type of event, we were surprised that the majority of attendees also said they would prefer to hear about similar events through email. When it came to the content covered during the Unconference, nearly all of the survey participants found the trauma-informed libraries topic valuable or relevant. The sessions on customer service and budgeting were valuable or relevant, but to a smaller portion of attendees. Some feedback on the customer service portion was that it didn't quite fall into other duties as assigned and might be a little dated. Now, that said, I don't know of any classes in library school that cover customer service, and it is a major part of librarianship. Although the breakout topics received mostly positive qualitative feedback, there was also some feedback that more structure would have been welcome and perhaps a wrap-up of the breakout topics for those who didn't attend the post-event get-together. Interestingly, the breakout sessions were the most unconference-y element of our program, but were ranked the lowest for value or relevancy. Overall, the attendees reported satisfaction with the topics covered and the format of the event. Given that this was the first time anyone on our team had planned an unconference, we were very happy with these results. We thought others might want to host similar events in their own regions, so we asked the attendees, what other topics would you discuss if you were coming up with other duties as assigned? These were some of the suggested topics from our attendees, and they included managing stress, staffing issues, and marketing. There is a definite sense that a similar event could be planned in the future with plenty of available topics for discussion. And with that, we would like to give a big thank you from Team SmAlbany. We hope you enjoyed our presentation, and you'll find any references that we used on the last slide. Here's a list of references. Thank you very much.